Hello viewers, my name is Rudolph Okonkwo. Welcome to Sahara TV here in New York City. We have in the studio with us a special guest. He was a senator representing Ekiti State at the National Assembly. He's currently a special advisor to President Muhammadu Buhari on political matters and a candidate for governorship.
An aspirant. Really.
Aspirant, okay, not a candidate yet, of Ekiti State. Welcome to Sahara TV, Mr. Femio. Nice to see you.
Nice being here.
So, most of our viewers are interested in your role as advisor to the president.
Yes.
And I want to get you an assessment on how Buhari has done in the last 2.5 years.
Well, thank you very much. I am a special advisor to the president on political matters, as you have said, and my role is basically to advise the president on things political, to gather political intelligence, and to relate with political leaders, political parties across the country, and generally the political constituency. So it's that's what we have been doing. As regards assessment of the president, I think, in my own opinion, and very strongly and responsibly too, that he has tried. He's done his best, considering the damage that has been done to the country over the years. And, Nigerians are impatient now because they want the problem solved quickly. But, it's not something that can be, that can be fixed overnight. We have to really give him time to continue to do the good work. What we can say and what everybody has agreed on is that, look, the regime is not the kind of regimes we had in the past, where there is so much wastage and everybody's looting and taking the money out without offering Nigerians any service. Yeah.
Now most people who voted for him, they are now asking the question: where is the change?
The change is there.
But they've not seen it. Why is there a disconnect?
There is no disconnect. I think that there was this high expectation. There was the feeling that the problems facing the country can be solved overnight. It can be a quick fix, but it can never be a quick fix. When you ask where is the change, I can feel the change from my own vantage position.
Of course, you're in
particularly because you see, the thing is that over the years, quite a lot of resources of the country have been wasted, on frivolous things. The president has managed to block all of those frivolities, and a lot of resources now are being concentrated on providing infrastructure for the people. I'll just give an example, which we survived here. In 2014, the government of Jonathan budgeted 25 billion for infrastructure in Nigeria. That itself is just peanut, considering the problems that are facing us, other on other rail line, on the roads, the airports, and several other infrastructure challenges. But by 2015, 2016. The president has upped it to almost 750 billion. That was at the time.
But of course, the value of the money is totally different now.
No. When you look at 2014 and 2015, you don't have that kind of.
No, it's like double. The naira in 2000.
Yeah, even if you see it as double, if you talk of 25 billion and 750 billion, there is still so much, so much difference.
Okay.
And what we are saying about this is that this was at a time when the income of government has reduced, significantly. As at the time I'm talking of, when Jonathan was voting 25 billion for infrastructure, a barrel of crude oil was about $110. As at 2016, 15, it has gone down to almost $35. And also even the production has also went down. As at 2014, we were, perhaps, daily selling about 2.5 million barrels. It went drastically down to 500,000 barrels.
Okay, let's talk about some issues where I felt that the president took self-inflicted damages on the government. One issue is oil scarcity, fuel scarcity that happened.
The one that recently happened.
what happened there? Why would the president, who is the minister for petroleum, be not able to hold himself accountable for what happened? People felt that, one, they should have anticipated what's going on, and now we're beginning to hear the stories that there is subsidy. And remember, he said there was nothing like subsidy when he was campaigning. What happened? Can you explain to me?
Again, let me say, I'm not in charge of the economy. I'm advisor for political. But again, let us look at it this way. You know, we had a government in power for quite 16 years, before he came into power. And everyone, every organization, you know, everybody running the economy, particularly the fuel economy, from 1999, you know, to present, they are still the same people who are there. You understand that? And the president has taken some decisions that drastically reduced their profit. You know, the rent economy around fuel supply. And for me, from, you know, looking at it from my own position, they are trying to fight back to ensure that, look, if we are not going to allow us make money as we used to make money, we're going to, you know, find a way of dealing with you and your administration and ensure that.
So the government could not anticipate what will happen, because this was happening now.
Well, you look at it. Why suddenly at Christmas? Why? You know.
But this is what they're saying. The marketers, they're saying that they were not making any profit, and the government is not trying to do something about it. So they decided to.
They were not making any profit, or that they were not being allowed to make the kind of profit they used to make before.
Well, let's look at that, because I understand what they are saying.
Yeah.
In the sense that,
do you understand what we are saying?
No. The government is saying that now we are hearing that there's subsidy.
Yeah.
And what is subsidy? If a barrel of oil is selling for now it's 67.
Right.
Okay. When it was selling for 30 something,
yes.
Okay, there may not be subsidy. But if it's selling for 67, if you are importing that, there is now subsidy.
Right.
It's just increasing the exchange rate. If the naira was 200 and today it's 400,
can I tell you what
that is double.
Can I tell you this?
Okay.
Look, the government put an arrangement in place, which is that you take crude out, you refine it and bring it back.
Is that what we're doing now with the marketers?
No. I mean, there are companies that were assigned to do that. You know, I think about 5 or 10 companies, I can't remember now, who were, you know, allowed to take out crude to refine and then bring it back to Nigeria to sell. Of course, I don't know the kind of arrangement that has been worked out. Suddenly, this issue about marketers and subsidy and all the kind of craps that happened in the past is reimagined.
Yeah. So how do you explain that to Nigerians?
I see a lot of conspiracy, you know. I mean, looking at it from the political point of view, election is coming next year, you know.
So they are ganging up against
people are
government.
dissatisfied. No, I'm serious. People are dissatisfied that they are not being allowed to make the kind of product they used to make before. In the past, you ask people to bring in fuel, there is so much subsidy on it, they bring in all kinds of invoices, you pay them for even what has not been imported. But that was stopped. Now, many of them are groaning under the, you know, the new regime and, you know, governing the oil business. And I just see some kind of, you know, sneaky way to make the, you know.
Okay, this is where we are now. This is where we are. The options for Nigerians are three.
Yes.
Do you pay subsidy? One.
Yes.
The government is considering paying subsidy. They are considering, do we increase the pump price of petrol? What will you advise the president to do?
My own immediate is to look at how, you know, the government can collaborate with refineries, you know, across
that's
the
a
world.
long-term thing.
It's not long time.
I mean,
that is what we have been doing. Yeah. That's what we have been doing.
Okay.
While we are waiting for the Mudra refineries and the big refinery being put, you know, in place by Dangote to be you know.
So why did it collapse during the Christmas period?
That's what I'm saying. It's, you know, the marketers know that, look, the Christmas period is a busy period, but that it's going to be a period where people will be so emotional about this.
Today's news,
yes,
Kachukwu is saying that there's no way they can continue to sell at 145. That it has to go up to 180.
I've not read the news.
That's what he's saying, you know.
Why
and the marketers, that's what the marketers are also saying. We cannot import at 145. If you skip it at 145, we're not going to import. And Kachukwu agreed that it's lack of importation that caused the whole problem.
Saying that
today, yeah.
Okay,
so that's
I'll need to bring myself up.
Okay, let's leave that. Let's go to the Fulani herdsmen.
Yes,
which is terrible.
Yeah.
The situation. This is what people are saying. This is what Nigerians are saying.
It's very bad.
That because Buhari does not want to address this issue,
I don't think
has
so.
not done anything about the issue. That's why it's
a very complex matter.
No, but everything is complex.
No, yeah. Of course, let me tell you why it is complex. When you talk about Fulanis are not just located in Nigeria. They are located,
across
West Africa, even some part of Central Africa. Now, there are issues of environment too. Environmental changes that has to do with that. I think again we've neglected for too long. The issues around these problems. Well, there is a practice that spanned over several decades. Even centuries, of people having to move their cattle from the north to the south to graze and all of that kind of thing. Now, there's need to be a drastic change, and when when such change is about to happen, you will have this catharsis that we're experiencing now. People are addressing it. Look at the case of Benue. The Fulanis from wherever they come have used a particular way of doing things. Now Benue is insisting that no, it's not going to happen that way, and you are seeing this crisis. I know, and that the president and the vice president have been addressing this issue.
Yeah, for Nigerians who are watching, this is 2.5 years.
Yes,
this has been going on. In fact, there's an escalation since he came in.
No.
There has been.
Let me explain this. I think there has been
for the first time, Fulani herdsmen became number 4 on global terrorism list.
Yes, again
under this government.
I understand this. It's not because it is Buhari's government.
No, I'm just saying it happened under him.
Yes, again because.
And people said that until today, he actually addressed the issue today. And you know what he said?
Yes.
He said that everybody who is responsible should be punished.
Yes.
That's
yes.
given. That's a given.
Don't you think that should happen?
No, that's a given.
Yes.
But that's not at this point. That's not what Nigerians were.
No, I'm saying that. Yeah. I'm saying that. On a long-term basis, the issue has been addressed. The Minister for Agri, for example, is looking at the issue of grazing. And seeking opinions.
No, we know, but people are dying. When you have 50 people killed today, 30 people killed tomorrow, we don't have the time to.
If you say people are dying, and the president said anybody involved should be arrested and punished.
It's not saying that. It's not just saying. What I mean is, it's not just saying it. People have passed that point where you are saying the same thing, issuing statement. People are at the point where are you doing something about it?
Oh, of course. People are
because the one that happened in Plateau, the one happened in Delta.
I mean, as soon as the one in Benue happened, arrests were made.
Yeah, for the first time,
No, that's not true.
I mean, almost.
That's not true. Again, I'm saying that is not true.
Okay.
Over the years, I've witnessed that.
Arrest and trial and
arrests are made. No, but let me also say this.
Yeah.
Generally, there's a problem with the justice system in Nigeria.
Of course.
Yeah.
We agree.
Which the president himself is trying to address. And again, when he tries to address it in the manner that he thinks will be adequate to solve the problem at hand, Nigerians will shout of human rights abuse. Why are you picking up judges in the night? Why are you, barging into their homes and that kind of thing? So again, he has to pipe down. I think it's about, administration of justice is the problem we have here. You arrest a criminal, you cannot conduct investigation, you take the criminal to court. It spanned over several months or years before justice can be delivered. So it's a big problem we have on our hand. So he is addressing it in his own way. And just because he's a Fulani does not mean that he's condoning, what is happening. No sane human being will condone the kind of carnage, that
you said something at the beginning that you do intelligence, to gather and
know
what people are doing. Do you have the sense that this issue, more than any other issue in Nigeria, is actually tearing the country?
It's a very dangerous one.
More than anything else.
The president himself has acknowledged that severally.
But are we dealing with it the way we should?
Oh, of course. I was a part of a meeting about 4 weeks ago, and I still got a mail on that particular issue today, where a committee has been set up of even prominent Fulanis to find a way of engaging.
Why are they armed and other Nigerians cannot be armed? Why should they carry AK-47?
Again, let me tell you this. These are the outcome of some of the crises around Nigeria over the years. You look at the Libyan war. you look at the crisis in the Maghreb and all of that, some of these harms, find their way.
No, I know. I understand what you're saying. You're talking history. You're talking, but to ordinary Nigerians
I'm talking,
who are watching, watching this.
I'm not just talking history.
Okay.
I'm talking of reality. You understand that?
Okay.
Again, when you talk about Fulani herdsmen, we have, come to cover all criminalities, with the Fulani herdsmen. The terrorists in the
I hear that. And people know that too.
An average Fulani cattle rearer goes about with his stick and the bag, across his shoulder, and then go and do his trade.
Not with AK-47.
Not with AK-47.
So the government is
the source. Yes, the source. It has been found out, via investigation, that the source of the income or the financing, of those terrorist activities may be cattle rustling. And for you to carry out cattle rustling, you need arms, and the arms are coming from wherever they are coming from. And then a good number of people who are committing atrocities in the name of cattle rearers, for all we care, they may just be, criminals and terrorists. Yeah.
A few months ago, like 2 months ago, I was in Nigeria. I saw them with AK-47.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I'm saying.
On the streets.
Yeah. Why is it allowed? The Nigerians don't understand that.
There is no. In fact,
why would the police
at the point,
the
president issued an order that the police should arrest anybody who claims to be a cattle rearer bearing arms.
And why now
it's now left to the police to carry it. And that's why I talked about the justice administration in Nigeria. It's like saying, there is somebody committed murder, and you say, look, you must arrest and prosecute and make sure that the fellow pay for it. The president himself will not be the one.
No, of course I understand.
To go and do that.
But look at this issue: the Nnamdi Kanu and the Biafrans.
Yes,
it was another challenge to the government. The government took action.
Yes, when it was, threatening the fabric of the country.
But this Fulani thing is threatening the fabric of the country more than the Biafrans.
Again, you cannot compare Fulani's the cattle rearing issue.
Well, people are dying.
I'm not saying
than the Biafrans.
I'm not saying people are not dying.
Or than Boko Haram. Actually operated.
This is the kind of war that the so-called herders are fighting. It's more like terrorism. It's not something that is organized. It's not something that is locatable like that of Kanu, who say, okay, I'm located here. This is our office. This is our headquarters. We are a group. We are that kind of thing. No, individuals carrying AK-47, going from bush to from one part of one bush to the other. It's not an organized army. Okay. So you need to fight it. They must be fought, But while you are also fighting it, you must be looking at the long-term solution to the problems that we
let's look at it. If the government continues to do basically not much in this issue, what might happen is that people might arm themselves in different states.
Yes.
Okay. And is that where we want to take this to?
What I'm saying, what I'm saying, and this is also what we need to look at again, which also the president has emphasized, is the issue of community policing, which has been worked at. When you begin to, when you allow the states and the communities to begin to organize their own policing, all of this, carnage will be reduced drastically. But when there is a crisis in Benue, you first of all have to report the matter, to the state command. The state command will take authority from the national command, and then, a lot of damage will have been done. But if you have community policing, every community is able to police itself, up to the local government level, to the state level, and the command is not such that is overstretched, that it takes a long time to for decisions to be taken. Solutions will be found quickly. So I believe that community policing, coming up with creative ideas on grazing, addressing the environmental problem, we perhaps in the nearest future give us a peace in Nigeria.
Okay, we don't have so much time left. I wanted us to talk about this. Well, let's one more issue before we go, and it's connected to what we're discussing. So the president said in this Fulani herdsmen conflict issue that people should be punished.
Yes.
Okay, and we are watching to see if people will be punished and if it will continue. But look at the other issue of someone like the former secretary to the federal government, who was involved in contract scandal, and basically Nigerians have to cry for 6 months or more before the president allow him.
I disagree with you.
Okay, doesn't matter. But it took
because
time.
immediately that happened, the president set up a committee headed by the vice president.
Of course, they submitted their report.
You know what happened? The moment they started that commenced that investigation, the president fell ill and traveled abroad for treatment. So as soon as he came back, the report was submitted to him, and he looked at it and then took a decision. And he said, "Look, please go and investigate, and then bring them to justice."
There's no other investigation needed already. He saw the one from
administrative report. It's not from criminal investigation.
Okay. So now, are you saying that after the EFCC looked at the case?
Yes. Then, of course, the president just about 2 weeks ago said, "Look, these people must account for what they have done."
Nothing has been.
Don't worry.
But look at the situation with someone like Innocent Chukwuma, the one who owns the car dealership.
What has that got to?
Where the EFCC acted immediately based on.
Do you know how long that has dragged?
So
what I'm saying. You cannot compare Innocent Chukwuma's matter, to the matter of Secretary of Government. I don't have a clear idea of what happened in that case. Whether it is, it's just a business deal that went awry.
Why did the EFCC get involved in that?
It's economic. According to the EFCC, it is economic.
But it's a matter.
They allege that there was forgery involved. I'm not here to defend EFCC. I don't work for EFCC, and I don't have the full details of what happened. But what I'm saying is that don't let us drag the issue of EFCC into.
So if you're advising the president, watching how people are interpreting this,
of course,
what do you say to the president?
That we need to look at it more critically and then take a decisive action.
Look at the minor case, the pension fund.
Yes.
What do you think? What do you say to the president, for instance, if you meet him?
I was at a meeting where the president was furious and angry. That look, investigation has shown that this is what this man is, and that for any system to have allowed that to happen, that there must be something wrong. And he again immediately ordered that the man, should be thrown out and also arrested and investigated. And the man eloped, So the system is still looking for him, and he will be punished for whatever he has done one day. I happen to have to be a member of the committee that investigated his case, when I was in Senate, and I knew the enormity of his crime. But this itself was not available to the president until it came to the notice of the president that the fellow was back in the system.
Okay, they're telling me that it's not time, but I can't leave you without one question.
Yes, okay, please.
Which is the cost of governance in Nigeria.
Yes.
Most of the money that we make goes to paying public officials like you, as senators.
No. I think. Let me say this, and that was what I said initially. That the president has done something which you need to recognize, and that is that he has drastically reduced the cost of governance.
How?
I'm with you now, special advisor. Wait. I'm with you, special advisor to the government, to the president on political matters. Look, I don't have an official car. I do not have an official accommodation. If I have to go on assignment to say Lagos Port Harcourt per day, I'm entitled to 25,000 naira for my accommodation, for transportation, and for feeding. I'm here. If I were in the government of Jonathan, I'm in New York talking to you now, my bill would have been paid. I would have perhaps be on in first class, be in an hotel in Manhattan that could be, cost about $3,000 per night or whatever. I'm hanging with friends. I paid my way down here. So that has reduced that. And I keep telling people, look, in those days when you come to Aso Rock and you are a bishop, a king, or a top big politician, you don't come and go empty-handed. They'll throw in your boot $50,000, $100,000, but that is no longer there. There's no frivolity any longer.
I don't know how.
But you see, the thing you could perhaps argue is that maybe allowances in the Senate and all of that. That's a different arm of government. That's a different arm, independent of the executive.
Okay.
Yes. So there is a limit. There's a limit to which the president can do in that case. Yeah. But the civil society, media organization like you can put that pressure.
It's out there. The pressure is out there. And people are looking for action.
And you know what the effect will be of the pressure you are putting?
Yeah.
Election is coming. Yeah. Nigerians are watching. I can tell you that 80% of those who are there now, if they do not respond to the pressure being put up by society, will not return to that.
Let me say this. Why is it that the president, he's the president and he's in a party that is in control of...
No, the president...
Wait. Yes. The party is in control of the Senate and the House.
Yes.
Why can't he say, this is important to me? Just like other presidents all over the world. I want to see this thing reduced. And I want my party, okay, to put out a bill and vote for it. Look, let them say, let the members of the party vote against it.
Nigeria, again, as I said earlier on, is not like any other country. This man is coming from a background of military, and he has an image which, of course, he was known in the past to, oh, Buhari is dictatorial, oh, he's iron-fisted and that kind of thing, oh, he will never listen, he's rigid and all of that. You know, each time he wants to take a decision, look back at that and say, look, this is a democracy. We were elected just as they were elected. Therefore, and you know, there is a separation of power. Let me show example by what I do in the executive. Let them, I also believe that they should also act responsibly, you know, with what they do. And as I said earlier on, it is incumbent on the society to continue to mount the prayer that, look, you cannot continue to live fat, you know, on the society. And there is always a recourse to the ballot box when the time comes. And that time is quite close now. Let Nigerians now decide on who they want to, the kind of individuals they want to elect as lawmakers in the next election.
One last question. When you were elected as a senator, I was watching and I felt that, okay, this is somebody I know in the media, and this is somebody I think will go there and push for change.
I did. I tried my best.
You tried that? Yes, because I want to know why you didn't accomplish that transformation that most people were expecting.
It was difficult.
Why was it difficult?
It was difficult for me because I was in the minority. Secondly, was that, look, the people who were presiding at that time had all kinds of, you know, engagements with them as journalists. So getting to the place, every time I want to talk, they never allow me to talk. You want to move a motion, you are not allowed to move the motion. There are several bills I promoted that were not allowed to be read at all. So, and that, in fact, led to frustration on my part. So when it was time to return to the Senate, I just told myself, no, I'm not likely to be able to function within this system, and I opted out. But sometimes when matters serious come up, and I need to talk, and I know that I will raise my hand, and I will then start shouting, you know, point of order, point of order, point of order. Of course, when I shout point of order, you've got to listen to me. You must, and it's not even always that I'm recognized and be listened to. But I did try my best, and in my own little way, you know, did a number of things within the Senate. You know, using my colleagues, providing information to others to use on my behalf, since, you know, Senator David Mark was not going to allow me to express myself. Yeah.
All right, this is a good place to take a break. When we come back, we go to his next move, which is to aim for the executive office in Ekiti State.
Yes.
All right, we'll be right back.
Thank you.
We all come from different backgrounds. That's what unites us. We all know life is about freedom of choice, and money transfer should be the same way. Introducing MoneyGram My Way. Send and receive money just about anywhere, using whatever method that works best for you.
Okay, welcome back to Sahara TV. I'm still here with Senator Femi Ojedo. Now, Senator,
yes,
we hear from some sources that you are interested in running for governor.
Oh, sure.
Of Ekiti State.
I'm going to run this year, yeah.
This year. Under what party?
Of course, APC. I don't have another party.
APC. So, why?
Yeah, because, again, I'm from Ekiti State.
I know.
I've been involved in the politics of the state for quite a long time, you know, to try to ensure that things, you know, goes well. And if you look at it now, there is no Ekiti person who is proud of what we have in Ekiti today. You know, there is, you know, resources being looted. There is, you know, a lot of issues with our image. All of us is seeing the image of the man who governed us. You know, we are referred to as uncouth or civilized, you know, thuggish in our behavior and all of that. And there's no development going on there. There's poverty, there's hunger, There are, diseases, unemployment rate is very high. Young people come out of school, they can't get job. You find people with master's degree riding Okada all over the street. People are taken to drug abuse and all of that. So generally, the place is in decay, and then somebody has to intervene. I've tried to intervene in the past. In 2006, I organized his impeachment and we sent him out of the place. And tried to organize some other people to come in. Somehow, due to some kind of carelessness, he's back now in power and to continue, his rampage. And we just think that we should not allow him to succeed himself. And we believe that we should just send him out fully and finally this time around when the election comes in July. Yeah.
Now, I understand that there are over 50 people.
No, that is not
quite
true. If you understand the politics of that state, a number of people want to be councillors. They want to be members of the House of Assembly. They want to go to the Senate. They want to be commissioners. They want to be SSG. And they are coming out to call attention to themselves to say they want to become. I think, seriously, if you look at it, maybe about 4 or 5 persons are serious contender. When the time comes, possibly in March, April, and the party calls for nomination, for nomination. And we have to pay 5 million naira to collect nomination from.
Most people will drop.
About 80% of the so-called aspirants will drop. Yeah.
Now, you are going to for now. We know that someone like Fayemi, the minister, is interested.
He has not said so.
Yeah, but there are movements
we are expecting him. Let him come.
And then former governor.
Yes, we know that Segun Oni has indicated his interest. And is working hard on
And you think you can take this?
Why not? Yeah. Why not? I'm so confident. I've been involved there. The 2 persons you mentioned earlier, I was, to a large extent responsible for their coming out, and they are getting to where they got to in the past. So I have been, involved fully. I'm perhaps one person who can tell the full story of Ekiti governance in the last since let's say 2003. So I know the place inside out. I come from the biggest constituency in that place, and I've contested election there. I'm perhaps the only person who have defeated Governor Fauci in any election in Ekiti State.
I understand, during the House of Rep.
No, Senate.
Senate.
He contested against me.
Against
and I defeated him.
Okay.
I had 68,000 votes and he had 22,000 votes.
You think if you were to run against him now, you will
beat him? I would any time, any day. He knows. I'm perhaps the only politician in Ekiti State that he does fair. And, if today, Fayemi does not become our candidate, it will be very sad. They would love Fayemi, former Governor Fayemi to become our candidate so that he can transfer him. But, that's his prayer that he becomes that's most unlikely.
Now, you said something about the image of Ekiti State.
Yes.
That over the last 4 years that he's been the governor.
Yes.
Why did he defeat Fayemi? And what did you learn from that?
I learned quite a lot, but that for me should be a story for another day. It's not something I want to bring out now. I'm actually doing analysis of that election and what led to our defeat. And before the coming election, I'm going to bring out a book on why we lost, and with statistics and with a lot of stories, an inside story I can tell. So it's not something I want to reveal now, but I know how to defeat Fauci in an election. I know what to do.
What does the rigging that we had about? How much of it was responsible for that defeat?
Well, let me say categorically now. Well, not again. You probably are trying to extract from me some of the things I want to put in the book I'm working on. I think towards that election, something went wrong with us as a party, as a government, and the Ekiti people didn't quite think deeply. They were just. They went to the police station vengeful and emotional, and that was why they voted, against us.
I have talked to some people from Ekiti. Right. I went to school in Akure, so I know people there, and they said that the former governor was, I'm talking about Fayemi, was the word they use, arrogant and not in touch with people. Do you think
that is their opinion?
Yeah, that's the opinion. Do you think that you have an opposite personality?
Oh, of course, I'm free with everybody. I don't have any reason to be arrogant. What for? I was born there. I was I was trained there. I have local friends I relate with every day. They come to me. I welcome them. I smile at them. We hug. We backslap, and I'm free. I don't have any hangover. I don't have any complex in any way. So your people are your people. No matter your riches, your education, you have to. If you're a politician, you must identify with the people, and that's, for me, is the strength of a good politician. Yeah.
Now, without revealing how you will become governor, let's say you are now after the election in July. Is it July?
Right, July.
July, and
the primary comes up in April.
Okay, and you are the candidate. And you end up winning. How will you transform the image of Ekiti from?
Well, again, it's by looking at me, as the person representing, the place, my courage, the way I conduct myself, my utterances, and the kind of, activities I carry out. It's enough to give a good image. Whatever you may talk about, during the government, and I keep telling the Fayemi when he was there, but if you have not done anything, you have given, a good image to the state. When you go on TV, when you go to program, when you give lectures or address the media, you give a decent image of the state. Forget about the other, issues that people might have raised. That Fayose lacks. He's just uncultured. That kind of, and the way he behaves is not the kind of things we know for an average Ekiti person. Sometimes we think it's not even one of us. That the kind of things we see around him is very strange to the average Ekiti person. Mm-hmm. So we have to first of all look at, present ourselves as a good role model to the people of the state, and let our actions, show who we are and who Ekitis are. Yeah.
Now, I know that Ekiti is said to be one of the most educated
states
in the country. Mm-hmm. And do you think that the elite in Ekiti State, how do they feel, first of all, about Fayose?
No, nobody's happy with him. Okay. No, they are not happy at all.
But it appears as if the masses are.
Well, let me tell you this. What has brought about the tragedy of Ekiti is this. Yes, we are educated. A good number of us are educated. But as soon and the moment you are educated in Ekiti State, there is nothing in Ekiti State to engage you. So you take off for Ibadan, for Port Harcourt, for Abuja, for Lagos, for Washington DC, for New York, for Europe and wherever, to go and look for greener pastures. So, likely those who are left in Ekiti are the poor, who live by the day, and they don't consider the high ideal of beauty, of envisioning a greater tomorrow or whatever. It's survivor. They want to survive. So when the Fayose throws a sachet of rice at them, they are happy. They hail him. When he comes on the street and drink this poisonous paraga with them in the motor park guys are happy. And he goes to the market, deceiving market women and all of that, they're happy. But we have made up our mind as elites that we can't abandon our people. Let's go in there, rescue them, build a state, and put things on ground that will ensure that the best of our people also live in that place, and they are living in the place. When that is done, there's no, ragamuffin that can come in and begin to, deceive the people. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, you work in Aso Rock, and Fayemi is also in Aso Rock.
Right.
Is there any indication as to where the presidency or people?
No, the president, and I can assure you, is fair-minded. He doesn't get himself involved in this. He will tell you, go there, go and convince the people, and go through the elections. If you look at the election that have been conducted since he got to power, unlike Jonathan, he has not been high-handed at all. Look at Anambra. When some elements in the local policies try to manipulate the police to withdraw ADC of the governor, the president quickly ordered that the ADC be returned to him. So unlike in the days of Obasanjo, Jonathan, when the ruling party want to win at all costs, or interfere in everything, Buhari doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. So I can assure you, as I'm sitting here and being an insider, that the president is not supporting any of the aspirants. And why should even the president be? Why should anybody be looking for the support of the president? The voters are in Ekiti. They are the ones you want to serve. And at the age we are in, if we are looking for crushes to work on from the president, then that's ridiculous. So I cannot go to the electorate and say, oh, I'm a candidate of the president or the vice president or one leader. No, that for me is an inglorious act on my part. If at my age I cannot go there on ground and say, these are the programs I have for the people. I know your problem, I can solve your problem, vote for me. That should be enough. Yeah.
Now, what about the party, APC?
Yes.
Who are they backing? Are they showing interest?
No.
Because
you see, we are all close to the party hierarchy. Oni is Deputy National Chairman South. I'm Special Advisor Political. Fayemi is Minister. So all of us are expected to be close to the party. So to now think that any one of us will now hijack the party to work in our favor will be ridiculous.
But
anybody who depends on that
we know that
will meet his Waterloo.
Yeah, in past elections in the West,
yes,
that some people have revolted against someone from outside. So say someone like Bola Tinubu,
yes,
indicating who should be the candidate for a particular.
No, I don't even think our leader will do that kind of thing. No, it's not going to.
But there's that perception that, and in some cases where he did that, yes, people revolted and voted for somebody else.
Again, people learn by experience. I'm not too sure. I don't think that will happen in this case.
In this case.
Those of us who are putting ourselves forward are people who have related with virtually everybody who is in a position to decide on one thing or the other. So they will leave us to fight it out, and then use our brains and our resources to, and maybe after we have, and one of us has picked the ticket, then the supports can then come. And I can assure you that whoever picked the ticket among us, we'll be ready to support whoever.
Now, let me ask
so that we can take the common enemy out of the place. Yeah.
Let me ask you, are you going to resign as advisor?
It's indicated in the procedure. You have to, maybe 1 month to the election. Yeah.
So is Fayemi going to resign?
Oh, of course he has to. He has to. Yeah, he has to. Okay. He has to. Even Segun Oni, who is holding the public a top position in the party, will have to resign.
Now, you ran for office in Nigeria. How much do you need to run for governor now?
It's very expensive. It's very expensive.
Like how much?
It's very scary. Well, it depends on the individual. Sometimes you have to be creative about it. I'm here now. Talking to Ekitis in diaspora.
They don't have money here.
A lot of people. No, they are not donating money.
Okay.
I'm supposed to come here and take hotel. Hire a taxi to take me around. People are volunteering. It depends on who you are, the kind of network of friends.
Are they looking for positions?
No, they are right by what is happening back home.
Okay.
It's like when you go somewhere and introduce yourself as an Ekiti person, people then begin to look down on you. They start laughing. So they want to take that out of their life, and that's why they are doing what they are doing now.
Okay.
Many of them are professionals.
So how are you going to raise the money? I mean, do you?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, friends will help. Okay. Associates will help. That kind of thing. But what I'm saying is that where some others will require 1 billion naira to run an election, I may not require to spend, a fraction of that because of the network I've built over the years, because of the goodwill I've had over the years, and also because of the creativity we are going to bring into the campaign. Yeah.
Now, Ekiti is known to be one of the poorest states in the country.
Ekiti is not poor.
Well, I mean, on paper, we see the money they get every month.
Yeah, why should we depend on the money we get every month?
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we are an agrarian society.
The money you raise from internally.
Yes. Forget about even that.
Okay.
Look, let's go back to the 60s.
Yeah.
Likely some of the resources Awolowo dependent on to build the western region were taken from our, cocoa belt in the Ekiti State. We have Isane Mure, and some other from Iloluji, Idore, those states. Why do we abandon all of this and then begin to go cap in hand, bowl in hand every month to Abuja to go and collect money from FAC? We have to, go back to the land. We need to go back heavily to the land. There is nothing that cannot grow in Ekiti State. Nothing that cannot grow. First of all, we have to feed our populace who are hungry now, who go to bed hungry every day. Let us mobilize them to go back to the farm. In the course of being on the farm, we then can produce things. Like, for example, cassava can grow in all parts of Ekiti State. And you can get ethanol from cassava. And, a lot of factories in Nigeria need ethanol. Outside, people need ethanol. We can begin to export all of those things. In Lagos alone, the food bill per day is 5 billion naira per day, food bill of Lagos. Let us imagine that we mobilize and go back to farm. We mobilize the effort of private sector, to agriculture, and we're able to just seize 20% of this, be able to take just 20% of this. Ekiti will be rolling in resources. Beyond that also is the human resources of Ekiti scattered all over the world. If we are able to tap on that to do some, very creative things back home, you can never refer to Ekiti as being poor. What is poor in Ekiti is leadership. That leadership that is not creative, that leadership that is not imaginative, that leadership that, continuously steal whatever it is left for the people. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you about being governor in Nigeria, because the assumption is that there's a lot of waste in the way Nigeria is structured.
I agree.
And it starts with even the governorship level.
Yes.
What are you going to do as governor to reduce?
Let me just give you an example.
Yeah.
You have a governor. The governor takes off about 3 times every week for Abuja, Lagos, or Port Harcourt for some, unnecessary trips. And what they do is that they charter the plane. The plane lands in Akure and take you on a trip to Abuja. Only you and your aides, $13,000. To and fro is $26,000. Multiply that by 3 times a week. Multiply that by 4 weeks in a month. Multiply that by 12 months in a year. That kind of resources could be used for something that will better a lot of the people. There was a governor who gave out contract of 600 million naira to furnish a government house. 600 million naira will create, a furniture factory that will employ people, and then again even furnish the government house. So there's a lot of wastage going on in governance in Nigeria that we have to. There is a liaison office in Abuja, fully staffed with cooks, with drivers, and all kinds of things. Even if you are compelled to come to Abuja for a meeting, take a room in an hotel and pay for the night. They will feed you, they will clean the place and whatever. Nothing stops a governor from going an Uber taxi. That happens here, for God's sake. We are living large in an environment where we are not productive. That itself is what is taking money away from development. So there's so much that can be done to reduce the wastage in government.
Now, I can imagine you being governor, and issues come up like issues of state police.
Yes, state police,
issues that are at the core of demand for restructuring in Nigeria.
Right.
Will you be saying that, as...
I'm on the side of that,
But now that you are an advisor to the president...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The president is not in disagreement.
It's not in disagreement?
No.
What did he say recently?
It's not in disagreement. Again, what we need to know is that restructuring means so many things to as many Nigerians as are alive. Some see restructuring as, okay, let's carve out our own part of the country out of Nigeria. Some, take restructuring to mean, let us, go back to the...
What was the understanding of the president on what it means?
The president agrees that there should be community policing, for example.
Okay.
In the area of fiscal federalism, the president is not, averse to, elements of that. In the area of devolution of power, it's not averse. For example, if in the past, railway construction and management of rail line is on the exclusive list of the federal government. But now these are liberalized. Lagos State is doing its own rail thing. Rivers, was doing it at a point. Abuja is doing its own thing. And there are several other things like that gradually the federal government is already devolving to the states. So a lot is happening. It's just that look, the campaign for restructuring is more political than real. People think that is a way to wrong-foot the president, on their way to,
because I know that, let's assume you become governor, and you have reasons to now demand that people will say to you, you were a senator, you didn't make that happen, you were an advisor to the president.
I could have made that happen, single-handedly.
No, I mean, you have
what can happen is look at it again. As governor, you read your constitution very well, and then know your right as governor of a state, and know the right of that state within the federation. Go ahead and try and do what is right, and then wait to see if the government will stop you from doing so or not doing so. That was again what Bola Ahmed Tinubu did when he said he was creating, those local government administration, centers at that time. Challenge the law. Let's throw out debates and then see what happens.
Let's look at this. A good example of what you're saying.
Yes.
Fayose dealt with the Fulani herdsmen by coming up with his own kind of hunters group. But that's his own idea.
That is very good.
And we have not seen incidents in Ekiti State.
No, that's not why there was no incident.
Oh, okay.
I can tell you because why? Look, when he did that, there was going to be a reprisal, and I quickly had to call a meeting of the Miyetti Allah, that's the group of the Fulani areas. I called them to my office in Abuja. I appealed to them that the Ekiti State people are not against you. They have been rearing of cattle in Ekiti State many centuries past. To now turn into a crisis that will lead to the death of our people is going to be. So please, this is an individual governor who is well protected. Our people are suffering now from economic whatever, and we don't want to add this to it. Please, for my sake and the sake of the people of Ekiti State, please, let's stop this idea of reprisal. And they saw reason with me.
So how was it resolved? So they are not coming into Ekiti
State. No. We now agreed.
Okay.
We now agreed that cattle rearing should stop at night. They should do it from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. in the evening, and that nobody should do cattle rearing at night. And that wherever there is any crisis between a cattle rearer and a farmer, there should be a way to resolve the issue with the community leaders, and that has been what has been on ground now. All of those things about local hunters and other, they were just showmanship and facade, just the way everything about Ekiti, under Fayose has been just.
So if you become governor, you're going to disband the
They are not even there. That's what I'm saying. They are not there. I'm from Ekiti. I've not seen any force of local hunters doing anything anywhere. No, it's not true. You just gather just to make noise and present a facade. Gather a few hunters.
So if what you did works in Ekiti,
yes.
Okay, why? For instance, did you not sell it to other states where there are crises?
Of course, that is going on. That is going on. There is dialogue going on. If you remember, just recently we were in Adamawa State. I joined, a party of the vice president of the place, trying to negotiate this kind of thing I'm talking to you about. A lot of things are going on behind the scene. It's just that the problems are more pronounced in some parts of the country than the other. In Benue is slightly agrarian. People are farming, and then Benue happens to be a passageway, from it's in the north central, between the north and the south. All of the cattle going to the southeast, going to the south, pass through Benue. So there's a massive train of cow, unlike Ekiti, for example, or Ogun State, for example. So that is why it is very, very pronounced there. So it's that again does not mean that the matter is not being addressed.
All right, we're running out of time. Let me ask you one more question about. Recently, we had people in Ekiti saying that political appointments do not go to Muslims in Ekiti State. That is only the Christians. What is that about?
Well, I think again, we have to be fair. Fair is fair when we are handling this kind of matter. People have to be sensitive to the sensibility of people, whether they are Muslims or Christians or different communities or different groupings in the state. Where things are weighed heavily in one side, it raises a lot of suspicion, and that's how communities strive. Do begin. So we should try and be sensitive about the way we do this. And for me, from my own experience, a committee set up by the president really ensured that was taken note of. The need for fairness and
So do you agree with them that there wasn't fairness?
Oh yeah, there wasn't. In this particular one, there wasn't. Okay. There wasn't.
Okay. Yeah. And you mentioned the media, and I remember that being someone from the media and working with the presidency.
Right.
How do you see the relationship between the president and the presidency and the media and the
Yeah,
government?
for me, it's been cordial. It's been cordial.
Been cordial.
Right, yeah.
Recently, the one reporter or blogger was arrested.
By who?
Daniel.
Not by the president. Not on
course.
the order of the president.
Oh, well, we don't know.
Not on the order of the
Nobody
president.
knows. But people...
The president hardly cares about such a thing.
But people read it that way. Okay?
No. I think there will be in the system some rogue elements who are yet to realize that, look, these days, you cannot go around hunting journalists. That does not mean that journalists do not also conduct their affairs with responsibility. There's a lot of fake news everywhere now, but you can't then solve that problem by being high-handed. But I can tell you, the president, the vice president, everybody at the top hierarchy of government is not into this business of handling any journalist. Yeah.
Okay, one last question. You've worked you were a lawmaker.
Yes.
You work with the executive as an advisor now. What did you learn as an advisor to the president that you did not know when you were a senator?
Well, what I've seen from a close quarter is that there is a force or there are elements within our system who are not interested in letting Nigeria move forward. There is a conscious effort. When you are trying to do something positive, carry out projects that, programs that we, solve the problem of majority of Nigeria. There are people who benefit from confusion and the lack of disorder in our system. And I've seen that clearly. And for me, I guess if the president had been younger, maybe in his 50s or 60s, he probably would have, be tough on people. But again, looking at where he's coming from, he perhaps wouldn't want to be perceived as a dictator again. I think there is a need for some exertion of some kind of force on individuals who want to keep Nigeria down. They are there.
Why don't they expose them, even if you can't do anything to them?
Are they not being exposed? When you talk about people who are siphoning money, someone is earning, and just a little about 500,000 naira a month, and is acquiring, 100 something houses in Abuja, is that not an exposure? Running accounts, going up to, to billions, that's exposure. Again, but when you then say, okay, you have caught somebody, you have their account details, you have the houses he has built, and you then hand it over to the security. The EFCC takes the case to court, the man is going to prosecute, compromises, the police compromises, the judge compromises. What then do you want the president to do in the circumstance?
If he can't do anything about that, then why is he running for re-election?
No. What I'm saying is that, why is he running for re-election? There are processes and procedures. Then there are things, some reforms you have to carry out, particularly in our justice sector, and that for me is going on, but it's not something that can be done in a day. As a military man, you can wake up and say you are jailing all judges, or that you are, sending all people suspected of corruption to jail. In fact, he said that in his first coming, he accused people of corruption and asked them to prove their innocence. Now, he is accusing people, and he is now the one being called upon to prove their guilt. So it's a different ball game altogether. Acting as military president and as a democratic president. So there's some kind of a equivalence there. But we have to be patient. We have to build up our the structures have to be there to take care of this.
That was what Jonathan was saying towards the end of his term.
I'm not too sure Jonathan, knows exactly what governance was about. Really, I think he was just there to have fun. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching us. This is Sahara TV. We'll be right back.
Yeah. Thank you.